Welcome back, viewers, to the latest researches and news. Today we have major developments from Tigray Region L. In our previous update, we mentioned that Tigray Defense Forces had released a video which they said was captured using a drone. That was already a notable claim on its own. But now there's a fresh development to bring you a second video has surfaced. And this one appears to go further than the first. The footage now circulating, and you can also watch on your screen. Footage reportedly shows Tigray Defense Forces drones conducting surveillance over mountainous border areas, specifically capturing positions belonging to the Ethiopian National Defense Force. In the video, several of these federal defense positions are visible from above, filmed from what appears to be an aerial platform overlooking the terrain. This matters because, historically, Tigray Defense Forces were not believed to possess their own drone capability on par with what the federal government in Addis Ababa has fielded throughout this conflict. That imbalance has been one of the more consistent features of this war. The federal side has had air and drone superiority, while Tigray forces have largely operated as a ground force. If this new footage is accurate, it would represent a meaningful shift, and it would explain why Tigray-aligned channels have reportedly been promoting their drone capability more visibly. In recent weeks, it's being used, at least in part, as a signal of new strength. Let's slow down here and actually unpack why a development like this is significant. Because it's easy to hear drone footage and move past it without understanding the weight of it. In a conflict like this one, drones serve several purposes at once. First, reconnaissance, being able to fly over a ridge or mountain range and see exactly where opposing forces are positioned, removes a lot of the guesswork that ground forces normally have to deal with. Second, targeting. Once you know where positions are located, you can direct artillery, or in more advanced cases, strike those positions directly, without having to send in ground troops to make first contact. Third, there's a psychological and propaganda dimension. Footage like this, once released publicly, signals to your own side that you have new capability, and signals to the opposing side that positions they may have believed were hidden are, in fact, visible for a force like Tigray Defense Forces, which has spent most of this conflict without meaningful aerial capability. Even a modest drone program changes the calculation. It doesn't need to match the scale of the federal government's drone fleet to matter. Even a small number of functioning surveillance drones can meaningfully improve a ground force's ability to plan movements, avoid ambushes, and identify weak points in an opponent's defensive line. So while one video alone doesn't tell us the full scale of this capability, the pattern of repeated releases suggests this is something Tigray Defense Forces want to be taken seriously, and it's a development worth continuing to track rather than dismissing as a one-off. Separately, during a recent meeting of the Executive Council of the Tigray Regional State, Tigray People's Liberation Front leadership reportedly announced plans to support the reintegration and disarmament of Tigrayans who had previously joined armed opposition groups. Officials did not name any specific group directly, instead referring to them using the general term anti-resistance forces. This is worth noting because reintegration and disarmament announcements often reflect an attempt by a regional administration to consolidate authority internally, bringing armed individuals back under a single structure rather than leaving multiple factions operating independently. Without more detail on which groups are actually being referenced, it's hard to say how significant this program will be in practice, but the announcement itself signals that Tigray People's Liberation Front leadership sees internal cohesion as a priority right now, alongside everything else happening on the external military front. Another reported development involves the continued movement of Tigray-linked forces through Eritrean territory into Sudan. According to available sources, this movement has not stopped, and additional personnel are reportedly being positioned along different sections of that border. Some analysts believe these movements could be intended to reinforce positions that are already established, or alternatively, to prepare for possible future operations if tensions continue to build. At this point, it's described as an ongoing troop positioning effort rather than an active confrontation. At the same time, fresh military activity has reportedly been observed in the North Gonda area. Convoys carrying Amhara militia members were reportedly seen moving toward areas near Wilkate and Selami. Separately, witnesses have also reported an increase in Ethiopian National Defense Force movement passing through Gondar, heading in the same general direction. Taken together, these simultaneous movements, Tigray linked forces through Eritrea into Sudan, and Amhara militia plus Ethiopian National Defense Force units converging near Gondar toward Wilkate and Selami suggest that the western Ethiopia-Sudan border corridor is becoming an increasingly sensitive military zone. For much of this conflict, attention has been concentrated on other fronts, particularly the Amhara-Tigray boundary further east. If these reports are accurate, it would indicate that strategic priorities on multiple sides may be starting to shift westward. At this stage, it's genuinely unclear where any future confrontation, if one happens, would actually take place. Military planning is rarely made public in advance, and all sides involved in this conflict tend to keep their operational intentions confidential until action is already underway. What we can say is that troop buildup appears to be increasing on more than one front simultaneously, and that pattern is being watched closely, since it could either signal further escalation or simply reflect increased positioning pressure ahead of some political or military development that hasn't yet become public. That covers the latest set of developments, new drone footage from Tigray Defense Forces, a reintegration announcement from Tigray People's Liberation Front leadership, and growing troop movement along the western border near Sudan. All of these remain unverified field reports rather than confirmed official accounts, so we'll continue tracking them and bring you updates as more details emerge. Thanks for watching.